Joining us to talk more about this case is Bruce Fein, a constitutional lawyer here in Washington. Bruce, welcome to our program.
Thank you.
We heard what Richard said. This extradition battle, if you will, could take on years?
Well, I don't think it's likely to take that long. One of the reasons why it could be protracted is that a defense to extradition is that the prosecution is a political prosecution. It relates to a political offense, not a customary garden variety criminal offense. And Britain as well knows that kind of argument because in the United States, before the Northern Ireland settlement, the United States oftentimes refused to extradite members of the IRA, thinking they were really engaged in politics more than criminal activity. But here I believe that Mr. Assange's strongest defense is that his extradition is sought not so much for an alleged conspiracy to agree with Ms. Manning that the two would work together to develop a skill to hack into computer information illegally, but that the real motivation is to get at Julian Assange because the Wikileaks publications of Ed Snowden material, of materials relating to political campaigns.
Well, you bring up a good point. Let's say the UK Home Office agrees actually to extradite Julian Assange, but on a limited charge. Yeah. Does that mean once he gets to the United States, he cannot be charged with crimes like treason?
That is correct. When you extradite, it's called the only jurisdiction that the United States could exercise over Mr. Assange would be over the crimes that were actually charged to lead to the extradition. They can't get him there and then broaden their attack.
Does the court in London consider the fact that Julian Assange himself has objected to his extradition? I mean, does that make a difference when a defendant says, I don't want to be extradited? Do they take that into account? I mean, what person says, yes, I want to be extradited?
Well, I think it's like a defendant pleading not guilty in a criminal case. I mean, that's expected. In fact, if there wasn't any objection, you wouldn't have a proceeding. You'd just voluntarily travel to the United States, and it would it freely done. So the fact that he says that he's not subject to extradition is really a very little weight. It'll be the substance of his arguments and what evidence he can marshal about the political motivation. And this is a unique feature here. You may recall during the 2016 campaign, then candidate Trump praised Wikileaks because the release of material was damaging to Hillary Clinton's campaign and by and large beneficial to Mr. Trump. So why would he have such words of praise for WikiLeaks, and then it's his administration seeking his extradition?
That's a whole different conversation. Yeah. Let's go back to the video link that happened today with Julian Assange. Why was this proceeding through a video link when the day before he had to show up in court and get his sentencing for skipping bail in London?
Well, it's different with regard to ordinarily you don't sentence unless there's the physical presence of the body there. But that relates to the local rules as to whether you can appear by video instead of being in person. Obviously, if you can appear by video because it's not the actual trial, you're not actually having testimony and cross-examination. It just can ease things for those participants who are involved, travel and other things. But I wouldn't give much significance to that.
And Bruce, I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but does UK have a history extraditing hackers to the United States?
Well, I don't know whether we have a history of hackers that's very extensive, but you may recall the very, very controversial issue of extraditing Mr. Pinochet to Spain, where he was charged with torture. And he ended up becoming so ill that they decided to return him to Chile because of physical problems, but they were very stern. Otherwise, Mr. Pinochet was not going to succeed in arguing a head of state immunity. So I do not believe that in this case, Britain has any incentive to go out of their way to resist extradition.
All right, we'll leave it there. Bruce Fein, thank you as always.
Thanks.